So a handful of episodes of X-Men 97 Season 2 just dropped, so I thought it might be fun to create a fantasy draft of sorts for a X-Men 97 themed wave of Marvel Legends. Sorry, one sec. Hello? Oh. Okay. Alright, bye. What? I love you too. That was the Marvel licensing manager at Disney. He says we can't use X-Men 97 characters in our draft. So this is going to be a little bit of a thought experiment. How can I simulate how the Hasbro Legends team designs a wave of Marvel Legends? Like that licensing manager saying we can't use X-Men 97 characters to avoid Hasbro creating self-competition with an actual wave of X-Men 97 figures. Or how each figure has to be on its own mold because you can't use the same mold for two figures at one time. Or how a brand manager might come down and say they want more diversity, not just in race or nationality, but in era, in publication history. Who is a villain, who is an ally, who is just a supporting character, and how do those relationships interact with each other? So to demonstrate that, our first figure, our anchor character of the wave, is going to be an all-new John Byrne style brown suit Wolverine. And yes, Wolverine is part of X-Men 97, so that breaks a rule right off the bat. But he's also part of the Big Six: Wolverine, Hulk, Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor to a lesser extent. Those are your anchor characters that Marvel Legends likes to have in every wave to ensure at least one character sells through. And that's really important because Wolverine is going to be the backbone of our marketing strategy. Build-A-Figures are on their way out. Let's be honest. Hasbro needs a new way of ensuring that their figures sell through. I believe that every single wave of Marvel Legends should come with one of the Big Six, or at least an A-list character, in their most iconic costumes to tie all the figures in the wave together, both in theme, Wolverine, X-Men, and with the gimmick, the interchangeable part that I like to call the collect and erect piece. And despite that being a hilarious joke, that trademark is still abandoned, so I'm just going to call it Collect and Connect from now on. But that was a long tangent. I digress. Brown suit Wolverine. Wolverine has such a unique silhouette that he's going to need his own dedicated buck. And in order for this buck to stand up to the competition, it's probably going to have to take some cues from the Gamerverse Wolverine with that diaphragm joint, with that ball and socket pelvis, and with neck articulation, akin to G.I. Joe Classified series. Now, in that original pitch video that I mentioned, I say that these anchor figures should be on the deluxe SKU. I don't agree with myself anymore. I think they should be the same price as every other figure in the wave so that people have steady access to these A-list characters in their most iconic costumes. 2 hands, 2 portraits, maybe some way of depicting his powers, and that collect and connect piece. I think all Marvel Legends figures should come with fists as a standard, but for Wolverine specifically, I feel like he could do something unique. Sometimes Wolverine figures come with 2 pairs of fists, right? One with claws and one without. And to me, when you can just pop those claws out, it just makes it a standard fist. So why not keep that as a feature? When you're making your extra pair of hands, keep those keyed in slots, just don't fill it with extra claws. You can just make them interchangeable. And I know it's Wolverine, but I really feel like every Marvel character should also come with a neutral head as a standard. The alternate head can come with a different facial expression, but in this case, I feel like we should establish what Wolverine's identity is going to be throughout the next 10 years of this line. For the past couple years, there's been a couple of characters that almost have their own identity with the various figures that have been released. Captain America would be a good example. 20th anniversary Captain America, Secret Wars Captain America, Gamerverse Captain America, and even figures like Ultimate Captain America and that stealth suit in, I think, the Brawn wave have the same face. That creates a sense of identity, a sense of consistency throughout the line. And personally, I love that. So the extra interchangeable head that is going to be included with this brown suit Wolverine is going to be an unmasked portrait that is going to decide the identity of all the Wolverines on this body going forward. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stick to one house style for every single Wolverine. I think you can have portraits with different art styles, but those should probably be saved for collect and erect pieces or potentially collected exclusives. And for the accessory that demonstrates the character's powers, you already have the claws. You don't necessarily need anything else, but if there is room in the budget, you could reuse those slashing effects that are included in that Gamerverse Wolverine 2-pack, but only if it, costs out. And Wolverine's collect and connect piece, that pack and accessory that intrinsically ties two characters in the wave together. I'm not going to talk about that yet. We'll save that for the next character in this wave. So the next character is from the 1980s. This figure is also going to be female. This character isn't necessarily a part of the X-Men, but is an ally, certainly. This is going to be Wolvesbane in her New Mutants training uniform to match that Secret Wars Wave 2 magic. And in fact is going to reuse most of that figure, except for the arm. We're just going to turn that back into standard training uniform. So for the two portraits, we'll include a standard neutral Rain expression, and of course her bestial lupine head. But we're going to do something fun with that, and I'll get to that in a second. For the interchangeable hands, I'm gonna forego fists and just go with the standard female splayed hands. And of course, again, her bestial clawed hands that maybe we can just reuse from the Zabu Wave Wolvesbane. Now for the accessory that is meant to represent her powers, I would love it if they included an unarticulated version of her wolf form. Except I like what they did with that man-wolf head in the Magic the Gathering deluxe set. I can't exactly remember, but instead of a traditional neck, there was something like a barbell, an overlay piece, and then the actual head on top. And if you could do something like that with Rain's wolf form, you could take that interchangeable wolf head as the interchangeable part for the actual figure. I think that could be fun and a relatively low-cost way of displaying her ability. Now, if we included a collect and connect piece with her, I feel like that would go just over budget. So let's step back, go back to Wolverine, and talk about his. Now, we've heard it said that female figures tend to sell less than their male counterparts, and that's why often in Build-A-Figure waves they would include the torso or the head with the female figures in the wave. Tie them into the most important piece of that Build-A-Figure so that they're a guaranteed sell. Well, if Wolvesbane being a female is going to make her the peg warmer of the wave, we're going to intrinsically tie that peg warmer to the anchor of the wave, Wolverine. His collect and connect piece is going to be an alternate portrait of Kitty Pryde sprite when she first appeared in the early 1980s, so that it can swap on that standard mutant training uniform. Not only does that tie the anchor and the peg warmer together, but it encourages multiple sales of that peg warmer, ensuring that she sells through. That gets us to the third character in this wave. This character is going to be from the 1960s. This is a supporting character, a proper X-Man, and also queer, maybe, technically, although not at this point in his publication history. This is going to be first appearance Iceman. Now, in that previous video where I draft a Spider-Man wave, I talk about if there's room in the budget, I want to see a dedicated Spider-Man figure. But I wanted the sculpt to be pulled back a little bit. Bring back the level of detail to be a little more generic so that they can do characters like Swarm and like first appearance Iceman. This figure is going to reuse the sculpt that I hypothetically created in that previous video. Now, he'll come with the fists and gripping hands that have hopefully already been sculpted for Spider-Man. And for the head, of course, the standard featureless portrait. If you want to get a little bit crazy, maybe you could inkjet print some shadows for his eyes and mouth. I love it when they depict Iceman with that Frosty the Snowman ass looking head. That would be such a great alternate portrait for this figure. And for the accessories that demonstrate his powers, you can include some of or all of the ice accessories in the Secret Wars Iceman exclusive figure. And for the collect and connect piece, you might already know where I'm going with this, but first appearance Jean Grey to put on that Wolvesbane generic training uniform body. So now what was the peg warmer of the wave is going to be the figure that sells out first, because everybody is going to want at least 3. Okay, now we're on to the second half of the wave, and it's 12:30 at night. I need to go to bed. The fourth figure of this wave is going to be a character, again, from the 1980s. He's going to be a villain. He's going to be a minority, technically, and he might even complete your Reavers team. This is going to be Wade Cole. Now, to differentiate him from Skull Crusher and Reese, we're going to put him on the Hercules body. And because he's a Reaver, he needs at least one cybernetic arm. We're going to give him Cable's arm from the Zabu wave, which was also on that buck. I want to use as much reuse as possible, so all of that tooling budget can go to these collect and connect pieces. So maybe you can get away with using Crossbones' vest in that Matamask 2-pack. For his 2 pairs of interchangeable hands, of course, he should come with fists and trigger fingers. His heads are just going to be a neutral expression for Wade, and just like the Skull Crusher came with a Reese head, he will come with a Mason head that you can put on one of your many base bodies that I'm sure you have. For the accessory that demonstrates his powers, honestly, you could just include a couple of sci-fi looking guns. Easy reuse there. But for the collect and connect piece, I forget what the issue is. I think it might be Wolverine 137. On the cover, there's 2 Wolverines, and they're both in his brown suit. And one of those Wolverines has been clawed in the face, revealing his cybernetic skeleton. Wade Cole's connect and collect piece is going to be an Albert head that's going to fit on our Anchor Wolverine body. For our 5th character, our penultimate character, he's going to be a character from the Grant Morrison era, 2000s. I think technically a minority, even though you never see his face. And he's sort of an ally, sort of a villain, maybe more of like an anti-hero. I don't know. This is going to be Zorn, but not the original Zorn. This is going to be Zorn's brother, also named Zorn, although one is named Zorn and one is named Zorn. Does that make sense? This version of Zorn has a black hole in his head, which you might be familiar with if you read the first couple issues of House of X Power of 10. Cool moment, but this is going to be his first appearance, well after his brother Zorn was killed by Wolverine while he was impersonating Magneto. I only really know the character from that original Marvel Legends figure, and back then I think he was still considered Magneto? I don't know. That was a whole confusing mess. But what is great about including this Zorn figure in his first appearance, he can almost completely reuse that Wong body that was in the Doctor Strange 2-pack. All you have to do is just cast it in white. But it would certainly be distinct, certainly be eye-catching on the shelf, and potentially a good gateway into the Grant Morrison new X-Men era. Now, Zorn would probably just come with fists and maybe some relaxed hands. Of course, the standard portrait would be his iconic helmet, and the alternate head, you could do Magneto, or you could maybe do something a little more fun. You could include the black hole that is in his head as the alternate portrait. And I think at one point that does actually happen in the comics. I think Havoc is able to hold it back. How? I don't know. Now for the collect and connect piece, I'm at a little bit of a loss. You could do Magneto. Maybe you could do a Frank Quietly unmasked Logan head, and maybe you could do it in an expression that would complement a later release of a true new X-Men Wolverine. And now for the last character in this wave. This is going to be sort of a character from the 1970s and also the 2020s. He's both a villain and an ally, and he's gotta be one of the easiest figures you could ever possibly make. This is going to be Proteus, as he's depicted in the 5 in House of X Power of 10. Specifically because you could use literally a completely blank body and nothing else, as long as you cast it in a translucent purple plastic. You could probably even reuse the head from some random bald character. But you know, this could be an interesting opportunity. Proteus is the name of a Greek god, right? But it also means first. I think this character, being mostly a blank body, could mean that this could be the first step toward rebooting the body archetype system, creating a new medium male buck that can stand the test of time, stand equivalent to Wolverine, but be used for characters that fit on the types of bodies that Vulcan and Bucky would. Of course, he would come with fists and maybe some splayed hands. He would include a neutral portrait. And for the alternate expression, there is one other character who is basically just a big ball of purple energy. It might be cool to include Wonder Man as the alternate expression. Again, for a character that is maybe not well known, that would ensure people buy at least one if you're a fan of Avengers or X-Men. For the accessories that are supposed to represent his powers, there are a number of effects that you can include here. Specifically, we haven't seen them in a while, but those bubbly effects that clip onto the arms, or even just a lightning effect like I'm reminded of Living Laser. Or again, if this is a completely reused figure, maybe you could start exploring new effects, like the ones that wrap around figures that are made by Can of Beams. Although you have the opportunity to make them more 3D instead of just cutting them out of plain plastic. Although Can of Beams does look good, don't get me wrong. Now, if we wanted to tie Proteus into Wolverine for his collect and connect piece, both in the comics and in the animated show, Proteus and Wolverine clash briefly, and what does he say? Remakes Wolverine's body, stretching and twisting Wolverine's head into stupid, funny shapes. That could actually be a really, really fun alternate expression for our anchor Wolverine figure, even though he's not in the correct costume. And that's the end of my list. Thank you for watching. If you have any of your own ideas for an X-Men wave that might follow this collect and erect system or not, let me know in the comments. I love seeing people's lists. And of course, let me know what you're thinking about the new X-Men 97 episodes. I was kind of worried that they wouldn't be as good as the first season, but so far, so good, honestly. I'm thinking for next week, I want to do a video about Marvel Legends art style, or just cut to the chase and talk about how I think Marvel Legends needs to be rebooted, but maybe not for the reasons that most consumers might think. I'll just say 2028 is going to be a weird year. For the people that I am subscribed to, I like to watch their videos from beginning to end. That's how I know when I've made a quality subscription. So if you've gotten to the end of this video, consider subscribing. Although I never hit the notification bell, so I don't expect you to. Don't worry about it. Phone users hyped the shit out of my last video. It was trending in DIY for some reason. I highly recommend doing it for your favorite content creators. And if you have any left over, I'd love it too. I'm Glenn, and this is Super Articulated. Hi, bud. You ready to go to bed? I'm sorry. It is 1 o'clock on the dot. We'll go pretty soon. Oof. 1:15 in the morning. Cool. I just realized I didn't have my rim light on the entire time. Great.